This is 180, where we have a look at everything that happened this week. My name's Paul Murray. Here with me on the desk is Melissa Hoyer, John Winter, and joining us from the Daily Telegraph offices in Sydney is Joe Hildebrand. We want you to be part of it, 0409 180 140. Now, this week, an awful lot of swimming world records have just been simply swept aside, and it all is pretty much down to, well, obviously the swimmers, but one particular swimsuit. A swimsuit that I don't know quite what happens with this thing, but it has absolutely changed the sport, with Ian Thorpe, Grant Hackett and virtually many of the other Australian marks being completely thrown away. However, I understand, of course, that the suit is going to be outlawed within a few months, so it does seem a little strange that you're able to compete, lower the mark, and then it gets taken away. It's a bit like saying, look, you know what, this summer everyone can use drugs in cricket. I don't understand. Or is it just because it's the Australian records that have been knocked over that people seem so annoyed about this, John?
Oh, look, I think that's a big part to do with it. I doubt the same controversy is festering across the rest of the world. We just take it very personally when we see our records fall. I know that Phelps has taken it personally, though, and because he's seen his records fall. But frankly, when somebody's got an outboard motor strapped to their swimsuit, you can get a little bit upset that what seems to be a more genuine record, which was more of a natural swimming event, is now being supplemented by something which is having such a clear physical difference. And I don't know what it is. As you said, I don't know if they cover them in oil or something, but whatever, they're slipping through much quicker than they would have otherwise.
But is there something to be said for the fact that, look, you know, I know that it's a sport about hundredths and 200ths of a second, and technological difference obviously has a huge impact. But the reality is, it is still the athlete who has to propel themselves, train and trade over their lives.
Yes.
Isn't it more so a scenario where if there is one piece of technology that seems to be outperforming everyone, well, we can either play fairsies and hand them all around or say, well, you found it first.
Yeah. I mean, this is the weird thing about it. If they're going to outlaw it, they're obviously admitting that, number one, it is the reason why they're going faster. But I don't get why, how they can in a couple of months outlaw it.
Well, exactly.
I mean,
but I just think it's that thing where about technical innovation, unless it is overtly cheating, and it's pretty hard to prove how an athlete having to put one arm in front of the other and kick as hard as possible and breathe on every third stroke. See, I remember my lessons. And I'll do a safety jump later in the show. how that isn't the essential value of the sport, and unless you're actually taking drugs that will physically alter your abilities, I just think it's a little bit of a whinge because we didn't find it first. Joe, I mean, how big do you think the fact that it's a whole bunch of Aussies that don't have these records anymore that plays in how annoyed we got about this?
Look, I think there's a bit of that. I mean, partly it's just that FINA just stuffed the whole thing up so massively by allowing them and then revoking them. I mean, just pick and stick, for God's sake. If you're going to allow them, just allow them all the way. Wait for everyone else's contracts with the other lot to expire so they can get on them. I mean, that's one of the issues. Not every swimmer can use them because they're contracted to companies that don't make the special suit. I understand. Anyway, I'm not a... The other thing is that... This is an inevitable part, though, of any sport. There's always going to be... You look at Cathy Freeman in a super space suit at the Sydney Olympics. You know, you look at the fast suits, the fast skins that Speedo had, I think it was, you know, that made, you know, our heroes like Thorpe and the rest go so much faster. And, you know, before that, they were swimming just in Speedos. Before that, they had to swim in bloomers or whatever, full dress with a hat and an umbrella. You know, I mean, inevitably... You can't sort of say, eventually you can't sort of say, well, actually this swimsuit is out there and it can make you swim much faster, but you're not allowed to use it, while at the same time saying, but all the other people who have used it in the past are still going to get to keep their records. So these records are never ever going to stay just because some guy got to wear one suit in Rome once. Like, none of it makes any sense. I think you need to make a call. You need to say, basically, all right, all the swimmers need to swim effectively, you know, nude or as close to it as possible, which, you know, with the little Speedos, which I personally would very much enjoy, you know, some more than others.
I don't know how this became about your fantasy. I asked you about swimsuits.
I don't know how, you know, maybe not Jeff Hugel, you know, back in the off-season. But, or you say, well, look, it's open to all and sundry and... you know, give everyone access to these super suits.
All right, keen to know what you think. 0409 180 140. Strange story from, of all places, Alice Springs today, that is now talking about what I think is a frankly very strange idea. We're all quite aware of people who try and hit you up for change whenever you're walking around the city, regardless of which capital or country town you live in. These are people who, of course, want money for whatever different reason, but now beggars will be fined. In Alice Springs and other parts of the Northern Territory, they will be fined if they hit up tourists because, of course, people eventually get rather annoyed with these things. It does seem a little bit strange that somebody who's asking you for money
Gets fined.
Gets fined. They don't have the ability to pay it in the first place.
Yeah,
Melissa.
I mean, it's a ridiculous sort of punishment if that's the punishment they want to put on them. I mean, if they do want to punish beggars, I mean, you know, you have to get them to do community service or something. I mean, it seems a ridiculous contradiction to be saying, OK, give me $130 because you were begging. I mean, it's just a stupid mentality.
But it does seem a little bit... I mean, we want everything to be, you know, vanilla and varnish and wonderful. We want no queues in front of us. We want no unpleasantness in our world. If there are a bunch of people that, for a whole series of reasons, from, you know, to sound like a bit of a silly lefty, like from addiction right through to the things that they've done to themselves, versus actually having no money. I mean, unless it is actually proven that this person gets to, you know, $20 and then goes and tries to score drugs from somewhere, we always assume the worst for people who have already had the worst happen to them, John.
Yeah, and I think that's... what are we going to end up with? The poor people are going to be there with their sign saying, please, need to raise money to pay my $120 fine.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
just... It's so nonsensical when you think about it. Exactly. If there are issues with homeless people and beggars, then surely the initiative that the council up there should be taking is to try and have programs to get them into work, to get them decent shelter and to get them fed. And instead of empowering rangers to hand out more fines, you know, it's
a very naive approach. I mean, it's just a stupid.
But it just seems one of those things where I mean, if the reason is because people are being irritated, that doesn't seem to be a good enough reason. You know, the reason you find people when they drive too quickly is because they might kill somebody, not because they might annoy somebody.
That's not, but the windscreen wiping guys, I mean, you know, they annoy you, but you're not going to sort of slap sort of thousands of dollars worth of fines on them because they come and do your windscreen. I mean,
they made that illegal as well for the same reason. So
how much do they? I wonder how much they fine them.
I don't know, 4 washes.
Yeah, which can only be paid. Yeah, which can only be paid in $2 coins apparently. Only $2 coins. Joe, what do you think about this? Is there a series of irritating behaviours you'd like your local council to wipe out?
Well, it's clearly just massively dumb. I mean, you can't say anything more beyond that, so I won't go on. I just want to know how they're going to catch them and where they're going to have undercover cops going around, you know, as Americans in bum bags going, hey, honey, you see the size of that rock? How about that? Oh, it's a beggar. Let's just wave a 50 in front of him. Why do you call these suckers a pineapple? They're crazy.
That's a stunning accent, Joe. I like it very much.
Thank you very much.
Let me know if you've got an opinion on this. 0409 180 140. Now, Melissa, I know you've been wanting to talk about this for a while. It is big news tonight that Delta Goodrem, Brian McFadden, have been chased down by a bloke on Twitter. Now, no doubt this will end up in a court, so we have to be somewhat careful.
Yes,
but explain the story, and why do we know about this as well as we do today?
I mean, the thing is, apparently that some guy on Twitter has been stalking Brian McFadden and Delta Goodrem, stalking in the sense of writing things like, I want to be with you, or, you know, things like that. But the weird thing about Twitter is, and if you don't have it, we won't go into it now, how it works, but, you know, you have to... People can follow you and you don't necessarily know who's following you.
Correct.
But there is, you know, you can block people, but you can't block people unless you know what they've said about you.
Right,
so,
right,
I mean, until
so it's a very public forum where you can pretty much say anything about anyone and the world gets to watch it.
And until you've actually seen someone write something about you, you don't know who to block. So they've obviously allowed this person into their Twitter world.
One of the many fans trying to follow Delta and basically his whole thing is that he's been trying to say very publicly that I can't believe I'm going into this detail. That Brian should leave Delta, and it's all obviously part of. I don't know what.
But I guess it just goes down to that whole thing about, you know, social networking and Twitter and really the potential cyber stalking elements to it. Certainly the privacy laws, and there's so many issues that I think, you know, places like Facebook and Twitter haven't quite looked at yet down the track, and where, you know, we could be looking at, you know, millions of dollars worth of lawsuits right down the track.
Now, no one here is going to sit here and say, well, what about a law for this? But I mean, there's clearly an element of weirdness about this, that somebody is able to start pushing you. If you start pushing back, you're the one that gets in trouble on these things.
But it's a bit of a strange environment when you think about it. Being on Twitter as a celebrity means putting yourself out there. You're actually trying to engage in this very thing. I mean, for God's sake, you've got Ashton Kutcher putting photos of Demi Moore half-dressed on there.
Yeah.
You know, it is about being out there. And it's a little like if you're a celebrity and you're walking down the street, you're going to get somebody come up to you and ask for an autograph or make an inappropriate comment or whatever. And isn't it just part of the nature of being a celebrity? It's unfortunate, but there's always going to be people out there who aren't quite stable enough to deal with it properly.
But, Joe, I know that you heavily muck around in Twitter and obviously for the punch and all those things as well. What do you think about this as an element? Is it a legitimate interaction, or have they done the wrong thing here?
Well, look, it's the price of, you know, shameless self-promotion, a pain I know all too well. I don't understand why Delta and Ashton Kutcher, I mean, they're legitimately famous, you know. I'm not famous. I'm trying to pretend. It's all right for me to do it. And I'm also funny. I don't understand why they don't do it. But, yeah, I think the idea that I think part of being a celebrity also is the idea of mystique, and that you are actually, whether it's true or not, and 9 times out of 10 you're actually far more mundane and banal than the average person.
Correct.
But part of the idea that punters like about a celebrity is that you're a bit special and you have this mysterious world that they want to find out about. But the more they actually find out about, the less obviously mysterious and enticing it becomes, which is why we love pictures of, you know, be it Therese Rain at the gym or be it, you know, I don't want to open another can of worms there, but, you know, anything, you know, Tom Cruise's new mansion, whatever it is, you know, like, people are intrigued by it. And I think when it gets up there, it just sort of, you know, it makes more sort of banal and normal and a bit pedestrian the whole idea of being a celebrity. And I think, you know, like, lets them down a bit. And we had poor Bri, I think, was engaging with this guy a bit, as you would if it was your girlfriend, and saying, look, stay away from her, you wacko, you know, or I'm going to sort you, or whatever. And it's just a little bit unbecoming for him to have to stoop to that level, I think. You know, and I think that even if people are checking up to see who's saying what about them, that's almost a little bit unbecoming as well.
We have plenty of texts on this. We will get to them very shortly on 0409 180 140. But quickly, I want to show you a great gallery which you should check out on news.com.au tonight. It's this thing called bed jumping. Have a look. It's when people go to hotels around the world and take photos of them mid-jump. We've got 3 of them here. Doesn't that look fantastic? What about this one as well? I think that is fantastic. My favourite of all of them, and there's about 20 of them online tonight, would have to be this one. I think that's great. It's called bed jumping. Give it a go tonight. Why not? And send in a photo. You can always email them to 180@skynews.com.au. More in a sec.